So for anybody watching who is unsure who I am Leah from Lakora Yoga, and I tend to help busy parents find some time for yoga. And today we are joined by Natalie. So I'm going to let Natalie just quickly introduce herself and let us know who she is and what she does.
Yes, thank you very much, Leah. So I am Natalie and I am a self-esteem coach. So basically, I work with women and I work all around, generally it's around like the mindset side of it, and around our habits. So basically creating positive mindset and positive habits so that we can increase our confidence, so that we can have a healthy body image. So I'm not a personal trainer, as some people sometimes think I am when I mention body image. And basically so that we can just know our worth and feel a little bit more happier in our lives. Basically, I think a lot of women these days, including past version of me, kind of felt very insecure about myself, kind of how I looked, my confidence, my ability to do things. So I am here to help women kind of get the tools to feel better about themselves without thinking they need to go off and do anything extreme. Like, we don't have to change ourselves physically or change who we are as a person to feel better about ourselves.
Amazing. I think that this is going to really resonate with my audience, because after having a baby, I think a lot of us kind of get into that mindset. I know me personally, I did as well. So what are the main symptoms or characteristics, I should say, of someone who isn't happy in their body or who may need your help?
Yeah, do you know what? It's sometimes it'll be like the really obvious ones. So when we're doing a lot of self-criticism about how we look, we're insulting ourselves all the time. Maybe we are wearing, as I say in this cardigan, but wearing like big baggy clothes that like don't attach to our shape because we don't want people to see what our shape is. Yeah, I know. Every time I say that, I'm always wearing something baggy, which looks bad, doesn't it? But and I think it shows up in sometimes not taking care of ourselves. So kind of basically not putting ourselves first, not nourishing ourselves properly, whether that comes to kind of what we're eating, but also kind of how we think and how we treat ourselves mentally. For most people, and not everybody, obviously, for some of us it can develop into just a really unhealthy relationship, not just with ourselves, but obviously with food, whether we become just a complete persistent yo-yo dieter, like we're always jumping on that diet trend, or maybe we we can get into disordered eating, we can get into mass restriction and binge eating. We can get into like a really unhealthy relationship with exercise a lot, which is where like rebuilding our relationship with exercise is so important when it comes to self-esteem and body image and confidence, because it is so important that you'll know like movement of any kind is really good for us. And I find that yoga and the slower style movements were hard for me to get into, because my relationship with exercise had become very much about calorie burn and maximum sweat. Like, if I wasn't doing maximum calories or sweat, I couldn't see the point in it. So to obviously get into something which isn't about calories, it's actually about caring for our bodies, was a very strange but very important transition. And it's great for connecting with ourselves, and it's great for getting really comfortable with our thoughts, because when we're doing yoga it's a lot slower. Our brain keeps going, we're not distracted by loud pumpy music and spin or anything like that. We're with ourselves. So it is really good. And I think sometimes we think that it spreads into different areas of our lives. And I can say this from experience, like there was not a single area of my life that I have body dysmorphia, and there's nothing that it didn't impact. So I was like really insecure in not just myself, in my relationships. I was very needy. I always needed validation. I had to be in a relationship, otherwise I was obviously unattractive to the entire world. I didn't go for jobs. I wouldn't. It kind of ripple affected into everything. And I'll always say, like, I don't know which was first. So I had like cripplingly low self-esteem and body dysmorphia, and I don't know which came first, I can honestly say. But they feed into each other. So like there's no way, for me, there's no way that someone can be really, really happy in every area of their life, but they really, really dislike their bodies. It doesn't work like that. And I think if you really, really dislike your body, there's no way you're showing up in every area of your life confidently. because it doesn't, they completely merge. So we compare ourselves. You know, we don't go for jobs, like all these little things. And sometimes we think that, I speak to quite a lot of women, and they'll say things like, well, it's not really about how I look, it's this, I'm unhappy with this area of my life, I'm unhappy with this area of life. And sometimes when you pull it right back, that's what it comes back to, that we're just really insecure in ourselves and how we look, and that's showing up in so many unhelpful ways, we'll say.
Yeah, yeah, because I guess it's quite hard for people to understand, like how they can feel all these things, because like you said, it's not just, oh, I don't like my body or I don't feel confident. There's so many little things that can show up, and even if they do feel really healthy, but like you said, if they're healthy for a week and then they quit and then they jump back into things, it's being non-consistent, I guess, with things as well. Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is, like, with the way society's built, we can get stuck staying as we are as well, because sometimes if we get praised, don't we? We get praised for dieting, we get praised for how disciplined we are about not eating cake, like we get praised when we lose weight. You know, people say things like, oh my god, you look so well. You know, people always used to say to me, like, some of my main compliments would come from how I physically look. Like, oh, I wish I had your washboard stomach. I wish I had as much energy as you. I wish this, I wish that. And I'd be sat there like lapping it all up, thinking this is great for my ego because I need this. Like, I need this to feel good about myself. Whereas at the same time, it was making me think, A, that I had nothing else. Like, it's the only thing people are noticing about me. So it's really important that I must keep this.
Mm-hmm.
But it also kind of like, it just reinforces how important that is. But on the inside, people can look around at thin people and they say, oh god, she's so healthy. Yeah, if we see a woman walking across the beach, society tells us that if she's a woman and she's in, you know, she's a size 10, she's got a flat stomach, she's got boobs, but she's also got a bit of hip, also got a bit of booty, she's nice and tall, she's really healthy, like she properly looks after herself. And if we see someone else who's in a larger body, who maybe has a bit of a wobbly belly and maybe her boobs are a bit saggy, whatever's going on, we look and think, she doesn't take care of herself. And it's so, I mean, I'm not saying that the people out in the world where that's not true, but for the majority of us, that is absolute rubbish. Like, at my thinnest, you wouldn't look at me and think, oh, she's anorexic or anything like that. To people, I looked like someone who really took care of themselves, was like really good with her diet, and she just, you know, had so much self-control. And I'd go to the gym, I was so fit and like so healthy, and really I was a mess. You know, I was counting calories, I was overexercised, and I was exhausted, I couldn't think straight. I was filled with anxiety. But to other people, they look and think, oh, I wish I was a little bit more like Nat when it comes to how she looks after herself. And it's like, don't be like Nat. Do not be like Nat, you know. And I think we've got to move away from that and stop thinking that those things are true.
Yeah, and it definitely comes more down to the mindset, because it isn't all about the way you look. And I can completely relate, and I know that we have spoken about this before, that I had exactly the same thing. I've always been in a slimmer body, and then people expect certain things from you. They expect that you are fit and healthy, and oh, how do you stay the way you do? And it does put a lot of pressure on you to I guess stay the way you are, even when mentally you might not be healthy, but then you get all this praise, so you want to stick with it. And yeah, it just goes round and round and round, and it's not
It
all
absolutely does. It
about
absolutely does. And like mindset for me, like, don't get me wrong, like, yes, okay, if we're not looking after ourselves, yeah, okay, we should look after ourselves a little bit better. And maybe you put on weight, maybe you lose weight as well, maybe your weight doesn't change. Of course, like when we do like just normal general self-care. But most of it, like body image, is so much about just how you think, feel, and behave around yourself, and your mindset about that. Like my body is heavier now than it was at the peak of my thing, but actually at the point where I was really struggling, and the point where I wasn't struggling as much, and I'd done a lot of work on it, I actually weighed exactly the same. I weighed exactly the same. The only thing that had changed was how I thought about myself and the importance that I put into my physical appearance compared to all the other things that I'm good at. That was literally, honestly, the only thing that actually changed. So I can sit here and say, like, listen, body image is not literally about how we look, because I didn't look any different. I didn't look any different. I was different. And I think that's the thing.
Yeah, noticing how you feel is
Yeah.
what we should be focusing on. Definitely.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
going into the body image kind of thing as well, I think I've seen so many articles and posts on this saying, you know, when you look at yourself in the mirror, what kind of thoughts and stuff come out? What do you say to yourself? And half of the things that you would probably say, you would never say to somebody else. So why say it to yourself? And
Yeah.
it goes the same with children as well. I've seen so many articles saying, don't ever like say to your child, like, oh, you're so slim, or don't mention anything about their weight. Like, say, oh, you are so happy, or like mention their emotions instead.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that, like of the way we speak to our children, or even to ourselves in front of our children?
Yeah, I think now this is something that sometimes it can make me feel like a bit emotional. I think about it. Like, one of my big things, like, my eldest daughter now is, I've got two girls. So Robin she'll be 8 in January, and Ilana is 5. So for me, at the time when I got pregnant with Robin, I was better than I had been. But I was still pretty neurotic about how I looked a little bit. So I kind of dropped some of the behaviors, and whether that's because I lived with my now partner at the time, we've been together 12 years, so it wasn't that easy for me to calorie count without him pulling me on it constantly. But when I got pregnant with Robin, I weighed myself every single day, because the fear of me losing my body through pregnancy horrified me. It really horrified me. And I would get those little charts that they give you of average weight gain, and I would monitor, I'd track myself with a little cross, like, every single week, to see whether I was normal, whether I was putting on too much weight. And actually, frighteningly enough, if I was a bit lower, I'd think, oh, I'm doing great. Not like, maybe I'm not giving myself enough nourishment for my poor growing baby. I would think to myself, oh, fab. I'm not going to put that much weight on over this pregnancy. Like, so messed up, really, when I think about it now. So when I had Robin, it was like a big shift for me. So for some people, it sends us completely wayward because our body changes. Like, when they said to me, your stomach won't be as tight after a baby, I didn't really understand until I looked down afterwards and thought, what? Like, just as I'm breathing, it's wobbling. Like, how does that sort itself back out? Does it? You know, and yeah, it might have changed a little bit, but it's by no means gone back to how it was pre-pregnancy at any point. And it was a really difficult time, because I was trying to move out of this place, because the idea for me that as my girls, they're both girls, and as they grow up, the idea that they would speak to themselves or think about themselves even to half the extent that I did, honestly, just, it really upset me to even think about it, because I thought, I don't want any child of mine feeling how I feel or how I felt. So for me, it was a really, really big motivator to sort my head out. And at the same time, it was a great distraction from myself initially. So it was a great distraction for me, because now I have a different priority. Like, I'm, I wasn't prioritizing so much on myself, but at the same time, we have to kind of manage that body thing. So for me, like, when I talk to my girls now, they don't, not too young to know the ins and outs of how I would maybe have felt about myself in the past, but I always try and give balanced compliments. Like, I'm not in the camp where I don't ever want to tell them they're beautiful, because I do want to tell them beautiful. And if they put a pretty dress on, I want to say, you look pretty in that dress. And I know some people don't like that and they don't encourage it. But I also want to balance that out with, oh my God, have you seen yourself on the monkey bars? You're so strong. Like, I want my compliments to be holistic. I don't want them thinking, oh, I'm strong, but I'm not beautiful. Or, but like you say, when I'm calling them beautiful, it's not tied to a weight. It's not tied to anything. I'll say, oh, you look really beautiful in those joggers. You look really beautiful in that dress. It's about them and just how they look. Not like, oh, you look beautiful because you've got long thin legs or anything like that. And I think that's the key. Like, I'll always encourage people, like, try not to give physical compliments all the time. Try not to make all your compliments about appearance. But that's not to say that we can't give out compliments about appearance. You know, we can say, "Young man, you look great. You know, that dress really suits you. You look fab today." There's nothing wrong with saying that, in my opinion. But if we say you look great, have you lost weight? Then what we're saying is, look great. We're tying the two together. So I think it's just separating that. But yeah, like, watch how we talk, and don't get too hung up if we slip up. You know, sometimes, like, my partner will have conversation sometimes about some of the things he says, because he hasn't come from the same world as me, and he's not a girl, and he doesn't get affected quite the same way. And that's not to say that men don't get affected, obviously not. But he'll say things sometimes, and I'll be like, can we not use that language? Can we just like change that? And I try not to be too anal about it, because, you know, as weird as it sounds, like, when we go through life, people might say things to us. So if my children go to school and they are larger than any of the kids there, somebody might call them fat. They might. And that won't be kind, and it won't be nice, and it won't be true, and it won't mean anything about them as a person, but it might happen. So I also like to teach them that sometimes people use words, okay, but that doesn't mean anything about you. And, you know, you need to be careful how you use words with other people and how that makes them feel. Okay, so for me, it's about having that resilience as well, because we can protect our kids, and we can cover them in cotton wool, and we can do all these things, but they go out onto the playground, and they go out into the world, and they grow up, and they move out, and diet culture will still be around for a very long period of time. Society will always have boxes that they try and put people in. There'll always be all these things going on, and my big thing is to just try to make them aware that goes on, to be aware of language and how it makes them feel and other people, and for them just to know that they're good, that they're okay. But yeah, that was a long answer, wasn't it?
That was amazing though. And it actually, it just reminded me of something when you said about you know, the words that people use to describe other people. And I remember seeing this thing once that this man was I can't remember his name now, but this man was trying to prove a point about this. And he was saying, you know, if someone says to you, like, "Oh, you're so fat," you know, it might affect you if you believe that that could be true. But if, and this was his example, if he went up to someone and said, "I hate your blue hair," and you didn't have blue hair, you'd be like, "Well, I don't have blue hair, so what does it matter?" Whereas, like, so he was trying to get to the point, whereas, you know, when what people say to you, it's reflected back. And if there's part of you that believes that, you're going to cling on to that. Whereas if you don't believe it, it's just going to wash over you anyway. So again, I guess it all comes down to your own mindset and how you see yourself.
Absolutely. No one can make you believe anything you don't already maybe consider as a possibility, do they? No, and I think that's completely true. And I was talking about this. We did a self-talk masterclass for the membership last night, and I was we were talking about something similar. And I was likening it to X Factor. So I said, look, people will go on X Factor, and you look and you think, why have your family let you on? Like, you can't sing. Like, this is them. Like, I feel embarrassed for you. Like, why is your mum like not said to you, don't go on? And it doesn't matter what Simon Cowell says, because they believe they can sing. So it doesn't matter. Like, as far as they're concerned, Simon Cowell obviously has zero taste in music because they're amazing. And a bit of me's like, well done you for having that belief in yourself, whether it's true or not. Like, no one can make you believe something you don't believe. And I think I remember, it might have been Rob Dial. I think I remember someone talking about that, and kind of like, you know, we can only believe things that we already believe ourselves, and like, no one can make you feel bad about your consent. That's what they say, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is so true, so true. So on that note, do you have an example of a client that maybe you have helped and how she overcome that? Because I guess we've spoken a lot about, you know, how people might know that they need help with this stuff, but how can they actually get help? Have you got an example?
It's an interesting one, because, do you know what, I don't think there's a single person that I've ever worked with who's had exactly the same journey, so to speak. Like sometimes they can come in with like similar concerns, but then actually at the root of it is all very different things. But there was because I know a lot of your ladies are obviously parents, but there was one lady that I worked with who was a mum, and she originally came into my free group and she's like, I just hate my body, I hate how I look, I hate all of these things, I'm tired, I'm stressed, like I don't eat well, and like this big long list of things she's not happy about. And at the time she was at home with her kids, so she wasn't getting out to work, she wasn't doing anything, she felt like she had zero purpose whatsoever. And basically we kind of sat and just really evaluated like why she actually felt that way, like what was it, like the root cause of these things, and really what kind of really mattered to us. So sometimes we're so busy thinking about what we don't like and what we're really unhappy with at the minute that we kind of like, she was quite trapped in that. So we spent a lot of time going, forget about what you're not happy with. What are you happy with? Like, what do you actually like? What brings you joy? Like, what do you actually want for your life? I'm not asking you to tell me all the things you don't like, but let's chat about the things that you wish were different. Like, what would you like to have? Yeah, if we were doing a wish list, what would be different? And then we basically just set goals off that. So when it came down to it, it was very much like around her mindset and around her habits. But it all came down really to just her general thoughts, like her thoughts and how she talked to herself, how she felt about herself, and basically just a lot of default settings and habits that weren't very helpful. So we basically just sat and kind of like reevaluated it all and checked in with it and kind of got a bit more compassion. Like self-compassion is key. So we did that. We worked through a lot of thoughts, we worked through a lot of self-talk, we really redefined what she actually wanted, and we set goals around that and literally broke them down into, okay, you want more energy, how could you get more energy? And like we'd list off all the different ways you could get more energy, which weren't about anything to do with dieting or being thin or anything like that. And then we just go, right, okay, so which should we start with? Which habit should we put in first? What should we start doing? Right, let's focus on sleep. Brilliant. And we spend a month focusing on sleep. Right, okay, what should we do now? And we literally just slowly built it up, and kind of started getting her thinking about herself outside of her mother role, and outside of the way she was obviously identifying as herself. And kind of like as a result, and to say like there's no one thing you can do that on, is there? So, but like towards the end, she kind of felt a little bit like she was not focusing on her body less. Did she still have hang-ups? Absolutely. We all have like small little hang-up things that we're not that impressed with. But she wasn't focusing on it. It wasn't, she could see herself outside of that. So like the world looked like a more attractive place to her. Like she felt like she had more possibilities, more confidence and belief that she could go and do things. Her mind was a lot calmer. Like we put in a lot of habits to just slow her mind down. She's a big thinker, a big overthinker, a big catastrophizer and worst case scenario. So I think when you can learn to slow your mind down a little bit and know your habits, like get really self-aware. Like self-awareness is the key to everything, isn't it? Getting really clear and then just building the habits. But yeah, she was a lot calmer, which brought a lot more happiness. So she could hang out with her kids and not be worrying. She could, some days say to herself, actually, do you know what? I'm tired. I'm not going to do any of the things on my to-do list, without beating herself up for a week afterwards. So yeah, I think, she just moved from kind of a place of feeling very lost, which I think as parents, we can definitely feel, feeling very lost, feeling like she wasn't really herself. We'd always talk about the old her. She'd be like, I just feel like I'm not the old me. I'm like, who is the old you? I'm like, sometimes, and I had this conversation with a different person actually, and although it's like a bit of a tangent, you know what I'm like. I was talking to a woman that I'm working with one-to-one at the minute actually, and she was the same. And I said to her, why are we bothered about the past version of you? Like, why are we trying to get back to that person? I don't understand, what's the attachment there? And she's like, well, what do you mean? Like, I want to take all this and be like I used to be. I said, well, yeah, but you're not how you used to be, are you? You're not you. Like, I am not the same person as I was 15 years ago. So sometimes we're so busy trying to get back. I want to think how I did. I want all the old habits I used to do. I want all of this and I want all of that. And some of that is still relevant and good for you, and some of it isn't. Like some of it, our interests change, our goals change, what we want in a relationship changes, our priorities change. So I'm like, let's forget trying to get back anywhere. Well, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in what you used to do. I couldn't be bothered. I'm not interested. Let's talk about what you want to do now, because sometimes they are very, very different things. And we can get so trapped in trying to go back to before the issue that we don't concentrate on, okay, from where I am now, where am I going? And I think that was one of the key things that we kind of did, was just come out of this, like, let's stop looking this way and dwelling in this, and let's start looking out. And I think that was one of the main ones.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do that. A lot of people look back instead of forward. And even if I've noticed this with people that I know as well, like even if we didn't have kids, we still wouldn't be the same person that we were, because we've grown, we've got older, we've learned more. You're always changing. Yeah, so looking back is actually pretty pointless.
Yeah.
We need to look forward.
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, that was amazing. Thank you so much. And it just shows that, you know, sometimes it just takes talking to somebody for somebody else to figure out something that's so simple, like with that lady who just wanted more energy in the end, like, you know, work on that first. It can be something as little as that. But sometimes it just takes somebody else to kind of pull that out of you to know what you need. So on that note, where can people find you? I know you've got your free Facebook group, but please let us know how people can get in contact with you.
Yes. Well, I always say to people, oh, just come and be my friend. Like, just come and be my friend on Facebook. And then you'll find an easy link into my group, because it is my cover photo, or you can just hang out as my friend. But my Facebook is where I like to hang out the most. I do have an Instagram, which is at Natalie_Trusdale, which is spelled like the screen, because it's one of them funny surnames.
Yeah, I'll link everything in the description.
Yeah, exactly. So you can find, and I'm on there. I do like reels and stuff on there, but where I like to hang out, because I like community, I like chatting. So Facebook for me is better for that. So that is the best place to find me. And I do have my website. You can go on there, which has links to everything and a couple of different resources you can kind of download on there, which I'll be building up. Yeah.
Thank you. Amazing. I will make sure that I link everything. And if anybody wants to get in contact or even have any questions, then feel free to message Natalie, go and add her as a friend. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, no, thank you very, very much for asking. I always enjoy it.